Hey, well, thank you very much for joining me in this video. I want to revisit self-represented parties. We've talked about it before, but not recently. In fact, we haven't had it come across our desk or ever to our attention, except in this past week. There's two separate incidents that came across my attention from our office about self-represented parties, and I thought it wouldn't be bad to revisit it. The first one involved a tenancy. Our agent had a property listed for rent, and they received an inquiry from a lady who wanted to look at the property but made it clear she was a self-represented party. The thing was, she absolutely refused to go through the information guide under TRESA, of course wouldn't sign acknowledgement of it. She wouldn't provide any personal information for FinTrack. She wouldn't give them any background of her rental history, refused to give them any information at all about her finances, and said, I demand you show me the property, and if you don't, I'm going to complain to RICO. That was the first one. The second one involved a property that was listed for sale. It was vacant. It was an estate sale. And the agent received a call from an interested party who explained that they were going to be a self-represented party. And they said, the reason we are a self-represented party is we want to save the commission. Well, most cases, that's why people are self-represented parties. They usually aren't that upfront explaining the reason. These people said, we buy, fix, and flip. So we want to grind it to the lowest price possible, and we want to be able to get it with the selling portion of the commission in our favor. So that's why we're going to be a self-represented party. Okay, so I want to talk to you about self-represented parties. You can work with a self-represented party, but you got to be very, very careful. You can't do anything that would be giving them advice, and you can't be positioning yourself in any way that would be having them rely on you. You can show the property if you're the listing agent, or if it's a brokerage representation, you can show them if it's listed with your brokerage. You can do that. But you can't, and in fact, you can prepare the offer, but you got to be extremely careful when it comes to preparing the offer. What you're doing in all this thing, whether it's showing it or whether it's preparing the offer, you're working in the best interest of your client, which is the seller, and their desire is to get an acceptable offer. So you prepare an offer, and you prepare an offer that's in the best interest of the seller, but you got to be careful you don't cross over the line. Let's suppose they have a house to sell. They tell you in passing they have a house to sell. Do you suggest to them that they make it conditional on sale of property? Well, perhaps if you think that's in the best interest of your seller rather than come in one line and take your chance, but then you're starting to advise them. They'll say to you, how much deposit should we put down? You can say, my seller requested $20,000. That's fair, but you can't say, I would suggest you put down such and such an amount. You got to be careful that you're looking after the best interests of your seller, not advising the buyer. What about a condition on financing? What about condition on building inspection? I've had agents say to me, well, I should put in there that the buyer was advised to have a building inspection and chose not to. Well, no, because you can't advise them to have a building inspection. So you won't put that in. You can say unilaterally the buyer has elected not to have a building inspection, but you can't raise it and give them in terms of advice. So let's take a look at these two issues and see how they should be handled. First of all, the rental issue. I would suggest that you say to them, I want to explain this is how I work. I'm not going to show the property until I've done some of my homework and find out whether it's a proper fit. To do that, I need to know some background information. I need to do a FinTrack to comply and that I've identified you, and then I need to know a little background of your rental history, a little background about your finances and your work history and so on to find out whether or not you can afford it, whether or not you're a reliable candidate. And if they refuse to do that, refuse to show it to them. Once again, if you're designated representative, the only way they can see it is through you, or if they decide to become represented by an agent somewhere. Otherwise, they can't see it. And don't let this business about being threatened to go to RICO deter you from doing what's right. Everybody hears about that, and they think they can use that as a sword over your head to force you to do things you wouldn't want to do. You're in the driver's seat. So I would say, and the other thing is, if I'm representing my seller or my landlord, who's my client, Do I want this tenant? Do I want to recommend them? Would I want them if I was a landlord? No. But all the decisions you're making about who you're going to show it to and what screening process you're going to use and whether or not you can tell them, I'm not going to show it to you unless you do this and this, make sure you run it by your client first and make sure they're on board. But that's how I would handle it. All right, what about the sale one? The sale one, I think you need to zero down right away on this issue of commission. You remember under Tressa, we were told that you had to lay out for your seller, when you take a listing, how the commission will be distributed if it's sold by yourself as a multiple representation, if it's sold by a designated representative in your office, and if it's sold to a self-represented party. And we drew up a Schedule C that outlined all these things. And one of the things I laid out at that time was that I would expect both ends of the commission if I bring in an offer from a self-represented party. The time to deal with commissions and commission issues and dual agency and all this kind of stuff is when you're taking the listing, not when you're negotiating an offer. And so you deal with it with the seller. And then when you're dealing with somebody who's saying, well, I want to do this because I'm going to save the commission. Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to save the commission because it's already under contract with the seller that they're going to be paying both ends of the commission when they're receiving an offer from a self-represented party. And the other thing to keep in mind is there's twice as much work and twice as much liability for you when it's the self-represented party. When these people want to come in for a subsequent visit, who's going to be on site through the property? You're not going to give them the access to the property on their own. You're going to be there. If it is conditional on building inspection, who's going to be attending when the building inspection takes place? You are. Who's going to be dealing with the offer if there's a sign back? You are. So it's a lot more work and you deserve to be paid. So deal with that up front and diffuse the situation as far as a commission issue. I think it's very, very important, but I think you need to review these issues when it comes to self-represented party because we're seeing a little bit more of it. I want to thank you very much for taking your time to watch this video, and I'll look forward to talking to you again next week.